Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Alpha webinar today. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Selwyn Rabins. I'm the person who has been gently putting you to sleep at night with my videos. And these events are always great fun for me because I get to meet so many of the people that I've had quite a lot of interaction with over the last year in the form of emails that have suggested ways in which we can improve the product. And in many cases, we've made those improvements. These emails that I term as suggestions on how to improve the product often came in under the guise of a bug report, but we'll overlook that. So today is a packed day, but what I'm going to do in my presentation today is focus mostly on what the Alpha product roadmap is. So I'll be doing some demonstrations, but it'll be generally light on demonstration and mostly a sort of a discussion on where we see the product going and why we're taking the product in that direction. I think it's very important that you understand the direction that we're going in and why we're going in that direction. And then tomorrow we're going to do a really deep dive into building a disconnected application, and then on Friday we're going to be talking about sort of best practices for building mobile applications. So sort of looking at where we are right now, basically the key point about what we have in Alpha is the description of the product here, which is a full stack, low code platform for developing mobile and web applications. And the key points in this description here are full stack and low code. There are a lot of players in the web and mobile app development space, but many of the players, if not most of the players, only play in some portion of the stack. They're either JavaScript code libraries for the front end, or they are MBAS providers for the back end. But there are very few people who play across the entire stack. And the reason that we believe that it's so important to play across the entire stack is that we make sure that everything integrates properly. So when you build and deploy an Alpha app, everything comes from Alpha. It all works together, and the complexity of building the application is dramatically reduced. You're not left with the problem of integrating different pieces of a stack to create the complete solution. So our focus is always on the completeness of the stack and the low-code approach, which means that you can get a lot of work done before you have to start writing your first line of code, but that we recognize that it is an impossibility that you will be able to deliver a fully customized application to a client without adding customization, and that customization comes from adding code. So the key aspect of our low-code environment is that we provide as many places as possible, so-called hooks, for code injection, where you can add code to customize the behavior of the application. So in terms of recent developments, we've obviously, as you all know, just released version 3, which was a major release for us, with the focus all on building disconnected mobile applications. And the center point of building mobile applications is the list control in the UX components. So all of the work that we did, in effect, to deliver disconnected applications was all centered around the list control in the UX. We've added a huge amount of functionality to the list control. And the point that I want to make here, and I want to emphasize this point really strongly, is that there are probably a lot of people in this room who are web developers and who are mobile developers, but who possibly don't yet have the need for disconnected applications. And they're saying, well, how does this impact me? Why do I care? And the point that I want to make is that the list control is now really such an incredibly powerful tool that whose appeal extends beyond just building mobile applications. If you're building standard traditional web applications and you've used the grid control in the past, you're going to find that the list control is a very lightweight, flexible, and in many ways more powerful control than the grid. So even if you're not currently developing mobile applications, if you're still focused primarily on building web applications, I encourage you to look very closely at the list control, because there's an amazing amount of functionality in the list. There's a lot of development still being done on the list, and it is the go-to control for your applications. I don't want to basically suggest that the grid control is going away, but far from it. The grid control is still the centerpiece for a lot of applications, but I'm just suggesting that you take a good close look at the list as well, because it's an amazing control. So there's also been a lot of other enhancements in version 3, and the release notes go through those in great detail. So basically getting to sort of the main topic of today's talk, which is the roadmap. And what I've done is I've broken the roadmap down into 3 distinct categories, basically: server-side, client-side, and deployment. And I'm going to discuss our roadmap on in each of these categories separately. And of course, as I mentioned, we are focused on all 3 parts of the stack here. This is, as I mentioned before, we're a full stack product, or a complete product. So looking at the server-side roadmap over here, the key points on our server-side roadmap that I want to discuss today are server-side JavaScript, Node.js, OAuth, reporting, data sources, and NoSQL databases. And as I go through each of these things, I'll be doing little demos on some of these things, showing you where we are right now on the roadmap, and hopefully inspiring you with some of the pretty cool things that I think we're working on. So let's first talk about server-side JavaScript. So the first question is why? Basically, Alpha already has a server-side language, Xbasic, and it's a pretty good language. So why do we want to basically introduce a new server-side language? Well, there are a lot of answers to those questions. The first thing is that it would be very nice if a developer in Alpha only had to learn one language. Now, obviously, on the client side, there's no choice. On the client side, it's JavaScript or nothing. There is no choice for client-side programming besides JavaScript. So given that you have to know JavaScript to do any client-side coding, it would be nice to be able to use JavaScript on the server side as well. So JavaScript at this point, I think, can be fairly termed the world's most popular programming language. I think IDC estimates that there's between 10 and 20 million people who have some familiarity with JavaScript. Now, familiarity doesn't necessarily mean competence, but you know, certainly it's a good start. So the other key thing about JavaScript is that typically JavaScript on the server side typically means the Google V8 JavaScript engine. That's all people who are doing JavaScript on the server side are using the Google V8 engine, and the V8 engine is really fast. There is no way that Alpha could possibly invest as much money in Xbasic development as Google has invested in the V8 engine. And so by leveraging JavaScript on the server side, we're able to leverage this huge investment that Google is making in the V8 engine. Another key benefit of JavaScript on the server side is that the V8 engine is multi-threaded, and also the V8 engine is cross-platform. So the fact that it's cross-platform means that there's, in our long-term roadmap, the possibility of moving from being specifically tied to the Windows stack to also having the Alpha servers run on a Linux environment as well, which is something that we would clearly like to do. So now what I'm going to do is jump into the first of the demos, and what I'm going to do now is show an A5W page that does a SQL database access, but which is something that most of you people here, in fact all of you people here, could write in your sleep in Xbasic. but now I'm going to show the exact same page running as a pure JavaScript code running on the server. And then I'm going to show how not only can we run JavaScript in an A5W page, but we can also debug into server-side JavaScript using the Chrome JavaScript debugger. So now, if all goes well, I'm going to move over now and do the first of the demos. So here we go. So basically, this is just a plain A5W page over here, and you'll see here that the very top line of this page here says A5 language JavaScript. So that means now that this page is all running in JavaScript. So I'm going to go now and run the page and then come back and take a look at it. So I'll go here and I'll say run the page. So there comes the page, and now here's this A5W page that has done a SQL access against a MySQL database in this particular case, has retrieved records from that database and is displaying the data over here. So if we go back now to our page and we can look at it here, what we can see is in this page we see a code block. So there's the standard indication that we're now writing code. I wish I knew how to. Is there any way, does anyone here know how? Sorry?
Paste it into Word.
Paste it into Word. Okay, let's see if that.
Windows button? Wait, no, you have
Control plus. Okay. Okay, I don't have Word here, but I do have front page. Let's see if that works. Okay, so I've lost. Okay, I've lost my my indentation and my colorization, but that's okay. So what we can see here is there's the beginning of our code block, and there's my debugger statement. Now the debugger didn't come up when I ran this because the Chrome debugger only fires in if you've opened it before you run the page. So I'm going to actually do that next. And you can see here that even though we're in JavaScript, I've still got access to request variables and also session variables. So my JavaScript code is running in a server-side environment that is the same environment as my Xbasic code. So I can set session variables, I can get request variables, all just as I would in my JavaScript code. But here's the really interesting part. If you think about server-side JavaScript, well, what's the point? Basically, the point of writing server-side code is that you want to do something on the server. You want to access a database. You want to read a file system. You want to do some kind of computation, maybe make a web service call. You want to do something so that you can return some either data to the browser. So in order for JavaScript on the server side to actually be useful, you have to be able to access databases and the file system and things like that. Now, when you think about what Alpha gives you on the server side, the huge value that we give on the server side are things like Alpha DAO, which is our SQL vendor agnostic access layer for SQL databases. But JavaScript by itself on the server doesn't give you that. So what's the point? How are you going to use JavaScript effectively on the server to do anything useful? So if you look here at the next line over here, you'll see something really interesting. So what I've done here is I've created a JavaScript variable called A5 that is just pointing to the Alpha Anywhere namespace. And this is now allowing me to access from my JavaScript code the entire library of Alpha objects that are available on the server. And I'm just doing this. I'm just saying var A5 equals Alpha 5 because I don't want to have to use Alpha Anywhere as my prefix for the Alpha objects. I want just to use A5 as a shortcut. So that line is not technically necessary. But here it gets really interesting. Look here. On the next line, I'm defining a standard JavaScript variable called CN, but I'm making it equal to a new instance of the alpha DAO connection object. So here I've got a new alpha DAO connection object in JavaScript, but I'm consuming a alpha object. Then I'm creating a new alpha SQL arguments object over there in this line over here. And now I'm adding a new argument called what country, and I'm setting the value to the request variable country. So if I go back to my page here, and on my request variable, I change this here from, I go here and I type in, say, country equals UK. Sorry, let's go here. I already had UK, so I'll go here and type in USA and then press enter. What I see now is my JavaScript page is now showing the customers in the USA. And what I'm showing over here is that the request variable, in other words, country equals USA, was visible in my JavaScript code over here. So you can see that this line over here, where we said country equals request.variables over there, and I'm setting my argument to the request variable. So my JavaScript code is again here seeing my all of my request variables, session variables, etc., that the alpha server is instantiating. So then we go here and we open the connection, standard JavaScript code here, mimicking the way that you would have done it in Xbasic. And now you can see in order to print something out to the screen, we use the print command. And then here we go through a standard JavaScript loop over here. So there's a JavaScript loop where we're basically looping over the data and printing it out, putting it into an array, joining the array, and then emitting the HTML table. So what we've got over there is an A5W page running pure JavaScript. So now what I'm going to do is go back here, and I'm going to open up the JavaScript debugger. So I'm going to go over here, and let's see if I can say, let's see, sorry, I need to, this. So now I'm going to open up so I've opened up now the Chrome JavaScript debugger, and now I'm going to go back now and run this page again. So I'll go over here now and run this page again. And if we go back now to alpha, we can see there we are inside the Chrome JavaScript debugger, and I'm debugging now into server-side JavaScript using the Chrome debugger. So there I go right now, and I'm debugging into my server-side code using the Chrome debugger over there. So I think that this is a pretty cool demonstration of where we're heading with server-side JavaScript. So let's carry on now. Let's go back to the presentation. So we've done that. So now the next thing that I'd like to do is say, well, okay, so here you are, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, this is great, you know, but I've developed a lot of expertise in Xbasic, number one, and number two, I've got a lot of Xbasic code that I've already written. So how is server-side JavaScript going to help me? So first of all, let me point out that one of the reasons that we're focused on server-side JavaScript so heavily is we have to recognize that Alpha lives in a big ecosystem out there, and the ecosystem is very heavily Java or JavaScript oriented. So your job is made easier when you go there and you try to sell your Alpha Anywhere applications to customers, or when you try to bring Alpha Anywhere into a corporate environment. Your job, we believe, will be made easier when you can say that the scripting on the server side and the client side is both JavaScript. So I think there's no question that the motivation for doing JavaScript on the server side is high, but the question becomes, well, what about all of my expertise in Xbasic, and what about all my code in Xbasic? So one of the great things about JavaScript and Xbasic is that conceptually, they're not that different in the sense that they are both interpreted languages, and they both, very importantly, support an eval type statement, which is the ability to evaluate code that is generated. So that means that it's technically possible to translate Xbasic to JavaScript. And what I'm going to do now is actually show how what the progress that we've made right now in automatically translating Xbasic into JavaScript. So there's two types of places where Xbasic to JavaScript translation is important. One place obviously is user code. That's the code that you've written that you'd like to translate into JavaScript for the benefits that I've described. And of course, another place where automatic translation of Xbasic into JavaScript is important, of course, is in system code, because a huge part of the alpha runtime environment is actually written currently in Xbasic. And if we can translate all of our existing, probably a million lines of source code that's written in Xbasic right now into JavaScript, that becomes the first step in moving our runtime environment from, well, not moving it, but supporting Linux in addition to Windows as our runtime stack. So I'm going to demo now basically a proof of concept where we actually, in one window, I'm going to be typing Xbasic code, and then in real time, what you're going to see in the other window is JavaScript code being emitted. Now, I don't want to suggest that we're done. Basically, there's a lot that we still have to do. But the proof of concept, I think, is really interesting and very exciting, because we're going to show how this Xbasic to JavaScript translation is a real possibility. And the goal ultimately will be that when you're sitting there in your components, when you're in a UX component or a grid component, and you're defining a server-side event handler for an AJAX callback or something like that, you're going to be able to choose whether you'd like to use Xbasic to write that event handler, or whether you'd like to use JavaScript to write your event handler. So let's go back now to alpha, and let me close down that. And I'm hoping that the screen is not too small to read here. But so the first thing that I'm going to do is open up this window over here. And what you see in this window over here is, in the left-hand side, what you see is a short Xbasic program. And on the right-hand side, what you're seeing is a JSON representation of that Xbasic program. So this is the strategy that we're taking. We're basically passing the Xbasic code into a JSON tree that represents the structure of the Xbasic program. Then we're taking that JSON tree, turning it into another tree, and then using an open source Node project called SCodeGen that takes a JSON parse tree and turns it into JavaScript. So you can see here that if I go here and I type something like, let's actually just start from scratch over here. So I'll delete everything that's there. So you can see now that as I type dim x as c, you can see that the code tree, the parse tree on the left is updating in real time. And now I can go here and say x equals alpha. And you can see there's the parse tree. So the parse tree basically represents the structure of the Xbasic program. And now the next step is to take that parse tree and turn it into real live JavaScript. So I'm going to go here now and open up another window over here. And over here, I'm going to basically go here and type in, say, dim x as c. And now what you can see is here's my Xbasic code. Here's my JSON parse tree over here, and then in the bottom window, I have JavaScript code. So there's my JavaScript that's coming out now. So now I'm going to go here and say x equals, quote, alpha, and then basically there's my JavaScript in the bottom window over there. Now I'm going to go here and say function.
Do you want to do magnifier?
I don't know how to do it. Can anyone see that or not? Or is it?
Okay, because we can turn on the magnifier if you want.
There we go. So now I'm going to go here and type, say, something like function, say, foo as C, and then say text as C. and then end function. And then I'll go over here and I'll say that. Now, in Xbasic, when you return a value from a function, everyone knows that you say foo equals, say, upper trim of text. So now when we look here at the JavaScript, what we can see is that if you look at the Xbasic code, you'll see that the function is defined at the end of the script, which is fine in Xbasic because Xbasic doesn't care whether you define functions at the beginning of a script or at the end of a script. But in JavaScript, it does care. In JavaScript, you have to define all your functions at the top of your script. So you can see there that we've hoisted the function definition to the top of the screen, number one. And number two, in JavaScript, basically the way you return a value from a function is you use the return keyword. So you can see there we've basically rewritten the function a little bit, and we've said var result, and then result equals, and then return result. So the point here is that what this little technology demonstration is doing is showing you how we're going to go about converting Xbasic in real time into JavaScript. So we've spoken about basically how we're going to convert Xbasic into JavaScript. So the next big thing on our server-side roadmap has to do with Node. Now, how many people here in this room have heard of Node.js? Okay. So if you look at sort of the buzz right now in terms of sort of articles that are written in the technical press, you'll see that Node.js is getting a lot of attention right now. There's a lot of interest in Node.js, in large part because Node.js happens to basically use server-side JavaScript. And there's a lot of interest around Node.js. So we've already done a lot of work in alpha in using Node.js to extend Xbasic. So you'll see that, for example, later on in the demo, I'm going to be showing how we can access built into alpha NoSQL databases like Mongo. Well, it turns out that the Mongo driver that you use when you're in Xbasic right now happens to be written in Node, and so from Xbasic we're calling Node services. So in other words, we're using Node to extend the Xbasic environment. And we've also now documented how anybody can write their own Node services and then call those Node services from Xbasic. So if you go out there and you find some really cool piece of server-side code that you'd like to use in your alpha application, we've already shown how you can use Node services from alpha. So in that case, basically, the topology is that alpha is on top and you're calling Node services from alpha. But another interesting goal is to change the topology and have Node on top and have Node calling alpha services from Node. So now, why would you want to call Node services from alpha? Well, as I mentioned before, what alpha gives you on the server side are fantastic alpha objects like alpha DAO. Now, if you go into Node, if you want to access, for example, a MySQL database in Node, you can go and look for a Node package that does that. And there are about 30 different MySQL Node modules that have been written, none of which works properly because each one was developed by an amateur developer who did a little piece of the problem to solve his needs, but there's no comprehensive, well-written, properly documented Node module for accessing, say, a MySQL database. So the ability to access alpha objects from Node applications is very powerful, and of course that will then expose alpha to the huge number of Node programmers out there. So we think that basically Node has a very important part in the alpha future, both in allowing us to extend our runtime environment and in allowing Node developers to extend their runtime environment. So OAuth is important to us. We've already done a lot of work in OAuth that has manifested itself in terms of giving you not single sign-on authentication using third-party providers. So we've released in this last release login with Google, login with Facebook, login with Twitter, login with Yahoo, etc. But we want to take that further now, and one of the key things next is consuming API services that are all authenticated using OAuth. So that means making it very easy to access, say, your Google Calendar from within your Alpha applications, or Dropbox, or Google Drive, or any basically API that is authenticated using OAuth. So that's a really big part of our roadmap. Data sources. Now, everybody knows that Alpha already has extremely strong SQL support. So you can access SQL databases very easily from an Alpha application. In fact, it's so easy that you don't even really think about it. It's just a given that it's going to be easy to query, update, etc. against SQL databases. We have good web service support. We have good .NET integration for calling into web services. But what we haven't done is made it easy enough yet to consume web services in your Alpha application. So for example, what we want to do is get to the point where when you're building a list control, a UX control, a list control in a UX component, and it says to you what's the data source, we'd like to make sure that the web services shows right up there on the list of available data sources. OData is another a good example of an OAuth type of data source that is becoming popular. We'd like to make that easier to use. And then there are integrations with very popular platforms like Salesforce, SAP, and Siebel that we'd like to make much more seamless than they currently are. So that's another big part of where we see our development effort over the next few months. And then reporting. Reporting is very important to many of our customers. We see lots of applications that incorporate reporting. And right now, in general, reporting allows you to do reports against SQL data sources seamlessly. So what we're trying to do now is add custom data sources. So what I could demo next, but I'm a little reluctant because it's so hard to see, but I'll give it a shot anyway, is an example of a custom data source. So what a custom data source here is, instead of writing a SQL query to get the data for your query, you can write any Xbasic function that will return data in a CRLF delimited form and produce a report based on that data. So that means that your Xbasic function could call a web service, could make a query against a NoSQL database, etc., return the data, get it into the right CRLF delimited form that the report writer wants, and then produce a report against that report. And then we're also going to basically extend reporting so that reporting works seamlessly against any type of JSON or XML data source. And that's important because that's web services typically return their data in either JSON or XML format. And then finally, I'm going to talk about templating. Templating is an area where we've put a major investment in Alpha, and we've shown client-side templating, how the templating library in Alpha can take JSON data, and it's clear that JSON is now the sort of the data interchange format of the web. Everything is JSON. You know, XML is certainly important, but JSON data sources are becoming ubiquitous. So the ability to basically take any type of JSON data source and turn it into beautifully formatted HTML for output on the client is an important part of our roadmap, and we've done a lot of work on templating that I'd like to show as well. So,
okay, so you want to switch?
So I'm going to switch now.
Before you do that, let me just do this. That's good. That's good.
Okay, I'm going to give this a try and see what happens here. So I'm going to go here and say I want to create a new report. And you can see now that there's going to be a new option there called custom data source. So I'll go ahead there and choose my custom data source. And then I can go here and I can now, in my custom data source, this is pure Xbasic and soon to be JavaScript on the server side as well. I can go here and write any Xbasic that I want that's going to return the data for this report data source. So I'll go here and just simply say that I want to write a function called xb, and here I'm going to go and define a function called xb that's going to return some data that this report will be based on. So I'll go here and I'll type in function xb as c and then e as p, and then end function And in my function over here, I'll just go here and say something like xb equals, and then percent text percent. So I'll go here and I'll say first name equals, say, C20, and then a pipe, and then last name equals C20. So those are the field names of my data source, and then I'll just go here and type in, say, Fred, Smith, and Bob Jones over there. So this is obviously a trivial Xbasic function, and I'll just go ahead there and click OK. Then click OK. The report writer opens up over there. Go and choose my two fields, and then go to preview, and you can see here there's my Xbasic report done now against a custom data source. So so we're working on these what I think are very exciting improvements then on reporting as well. And now if I can get back into my PowerPoint over here. Okay, so there's templates, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over the demo on templates right now. If there's time, I'll come back to that, and I want to move on now to NoSQL databases. So, how many people here are familiar with NoSQL databases? Okay, so NoSQL databases are also getting a lot of attention in the press right now, and while some of the people at Alpha have some pretty colorful opinions on NoSQL databases relative to SQL databases, it's not our job to prescribe what type of databases you're going to want to use in your applications. And NoSQL databases have a place. The big benefit of NoSQL databases is that they are schemaless, which means that you don't have to define your list of columns that you are going to keep track of in the database up front, but you can just basically add properties to a database record on the fly, because the database information is all stored really in JSON format. And NoSQL databases have a real presence in web application, in mobile application development. So it's important for Alpha to support NoSQL databases, and we've added support for Mongo and Couch. Now, the interesting thing about the way we added support for Mongo was actually using the Node.js, using Node.js. So we've used Node.js to extend the Alpha environment by calling into the Mongo driver that was developed for Node. And we've also put in direct support for Couch. And then we're also adding support for Pouch. Now, Pouch is an interesting option, because Pouch is sort of a subset of Couch, but it's completely written in JavaScript, and it's available on both the server side and the client side. So we're going to be supporting Pouch databases both on the client side and the server side, which is going to represent another way in which you can build mobile applications, especially disconnected applications, by leveraging the work that Pouch and Couch has done. So let's quickly go over it and do a quick demo on that. So I'm going to go over now back to my Alpha environment over here. And next thing I'm going to do, so let's close down my, I hope that's not the report window. Where is, well, this is not easy. Okay, so go back there.
If you ever want to get rid of it, just do Windows Escape, and then it's gone. Okay.
So what I need to do, Okay, so I've just run a script that actually has started up the Mongo database server over here. So there's Mongo running on my computer right now. And now what I'm going to do is go over here and run an Xbasic program that's going to connect to the Mongo database. So you can see here's the Xbasic code now that is opening a connection to the Mongo database. And then what I'm going to do is add some records to this Mongo database. And you can see that in Mongo, basically, the data is all JSON. So there, for those of you who are not familiar with JSON, JSON is basically just a format for describing data. So you can see there's the field called first name. It has a value of John. There's a field called last name. It has a value of Doe. And there's date. So now if I go ahead and actually run this code here, you can see now that we've added two new records to our Mongo database. And you can see there are the records coming out of the Mongo database over there. And now if we were to go ahead now and do a query over here, so let's go there and run this, you can see there's my connection to the Mongo database over there. And then I'm defining an Xbasic dot variable. And I'm setting the last name property to Doe. So that means I'm going to be searching for last name equals Doe. Then I'm going to turn that Xbasic into JSON. So now, and then I'm going to call the Mongo get records method using the JSON search property. So that's going to say last name equals Doe. And then I'm going to reformat that JSON into a nice format and then display it. So let's go ahead now and run that. So where's my okay, there we go. So there's the query result from the Mongo database coming out there and showing me the results of my Mongo database. So let's go back now, back to my presentation here and then move on. So we've decided that. So now what I want to do is talk about the client-side roadmap. So the client-side roadmap is extremely ambitious, and the things that we're focusing on now are, we're going to continue to focus on disconnected applications. There are, and I'll describe the things that we're working on next on disconnected applications. Then the next thing that I'm going to be talking about is touch-optimized forms. This is a major, major initiative on our part. We think that we have come up with a way of really rethinking how a mobile form that is, for enterprise CRUD type applications should be designed so that it's truly optimized for a mobile device. And what I want to show, what I'm going to be doing is showing you what our thinking is with regard to touch optimized forms. And we're going to be talking about large single page applications. These are called SPAs. That's the term that is commonly used in the industry right now, and why building SPAs is important and what we're going to be doing in that respect. I'm going to be talking a little bit about client-side data stores. This is a new concept that we're going to be introducing, which is going to lend itself very well to disconnected applications and also for integration with third-party libraries like Angular, which we see also as very important in the future for web development. Angular, like Node, has a huge amount of mind share in the sort of the development ecosystem right now. We'll be talking about third-party library integrations and also a new style builder. So let's first talk about disconnected applications. I think that we've already made a fantastic start in building disconnected applications, and we have a solution now that gives you a disconnected application in a pure HTML5 environment using local storage for the data that gets persisted while you're disconnected. Now, because we're using the HTML5 file system, there's a limit to how much data we can persist while you're disconnected. So with PhoneGap and the PhoneGap file system, you now have access to much more storage on the device. So the next big sort of push for us on disconnected is going to be around integrating PhoneGap into our disconnected story so that not only can you persist the 5 megabytes of data to local storage, but you can persist substantially bigger pieces, chunks of data using the PhoneGap local storage system, using the PhoneGap file system. The other big push is image capture while you're disconnected. So one of the things that we know that a lot of people want to do is, in their disconnected applications, have the ability not only to let users enter information and edit information, but also to capture pictures, and also ultimately to capture video and audio as well. So we're working on image capture, and we're working on image capture solutions that both are pure HTML5 solutions and also PhoneGap solutions. So we do not want to force you to build your HTML5 applications as PhoneGap wrapped hybrid applications in order to do image capture. And then we're going to also basically focus on static HTML applications, which are applications that are built in the UX component and then converted from components into pure static HTML5 pages that use the application cache. So the application cache is an HTML5 concept that allows you to load an HTML page on a mobile device even if you don't have a connection, if you've previously loaded that page. So in some ways you can think of it as sort of like a lightweight sort of PhoneGap. So just as a matter of interest, how many people here are familiar with the concept of the application cache? Okay. So the application cache is something that is built in. It's actually in the product right now, but we haven't yet done enough to expose its functionality and also sort of document it. So let's now talk about touch-optimized forms, and then I'm going to do a demo of some of the stuff that we've built so far in touch-optimized forms. So one of the reasons that touch-optimized forms are important is that when you're building mobile applications, one of the key aspects in terms of keeping the performance on a mobile device good is not to overload the DOM, because the browsers on mobile devices just are not like browsers on a desktop computer. So you don't want to overload the DOM. So that means that if you've got, for example, a large application, you've got a form with a lot of fields, it would be good not to have an editor for each one of those fields, but to be able to have the concept of shared editors. So that a first name field, a last name field, a city field, a state field, etc., can all share the same editor. The next thing is that when you think about data entry on a mobile device, when you tap in a field to start typing, the keyboard has to come up. When the keyboard comes up, if the keyboard comes up and it covers the piece of text that you're currently editing, what happens is, as you know, the screen needs to shift upwards for the keyboard to be displayed. And that creates a very unattractive user experience. So what you see when you look at a lot of native applications is what they do is they work very hard to not do the editing directly on the form, but to slide an editor into place where the editing is always at the top of the screen. And the point about that, because the editing is always done at the top of the screen, even though the field that you're trying to edit may be towards the bottom of the screen, is that there is no readjusting of the screen taking place all the time. So what we're doing in our touch-optimized form is introducing this new concept called editors, and we're going to be making it incredibly easy to build forms that are touch-optimized with these editors. The key thing also about touch-optimized forms is that they are completely template-driven. So that means that you can write HTML templates, you can get a designer who's got fantastic design skills, and you can easily incorporate the work of designers and third-party style sheets into your templates to create fantastic-looking forms. Keyboard optimization, we're basically going to be introducing soft keyboards that are written in HTML and JavaScript so that you don't have to always bring up the native keyboard. And the problem with bringing up the native keyboard is that the native keyboard doesn't expose events that HTML developers like us would like to see. They don't give us events that say that the keyboard's coming up, the keyboard's going away, etc. So we're much better off saying, let's write our own keyboards in HTML and JavaScript and expose a full event model around them so that you've got much more control over the keyboards. So you can create much more fluid user experiences. Then we're going to basically do, if time permits, a quick demo on this new concept called a view box, which is sort of an extension of the list control concept on which our touch forms are based. And we've spoken here about user-defined keyboards. So I'm going to try to switch over to Alpha now and do a demo of these editors. I'm a little reluctant because my demos aren't going that well right now. But we'll see what happens here. So I'll go back now to Alpha, close this down over there, close down my code editor, go now to editors, and go to web components. So let's see if this comes up over here. Okay, so what you can see over here are a bunch of controls like first name, last name, city, state, and zip. And then what you can see is a new container type called an editor set. And inside this editor set, I have one editor where I'm going to do some editing, and then a save and cancel button. And this editor set is in a panel card that is normally docked. So let's go now and see if I can run this and see how this works out. So actually, let's just go here to working preview. So what you can see over here as I go to working preview are my fields over there. Now when I tap on Fred, you can see an editor flying in from the right-hand side over there. Then when I tap on Jones, you can see the editor didn't go away, it stayed there, and now I've got Jones, and then I've got etc. So as I move through my editor, now if I go to this value over there and change it to, say, California, and then hit the save button, you'll see that the value over there has changed. And so the editor basically is coming up, and it's in an optimized position. It's always in the same position on the screen. Now this concept of editors and is actually is something that you'll actually see in a lot of native applications. Unfortunately, I'm not getting my AirPlay reflecting onto the screen here working. So I was going to just pick the Pinterest native application and show you, for example, how a user edits their profile in Pinterest, and you'll see that it looks very similar to this concept over here. But the key point about editors is that Genies will generate all of the code for you. So you'll be able to get a touch-optimized form very easily out of the Genie. So Brett's giving me a warning here that we have 5 minutes left. Okay, so I'm not gonna unfortunately be able to get through everything. So maybe we can pick it up in some later demo. But so let's just quickly go here, and if I can see if I can do a more elaborate example of let's go here, open, and
I'll be showing the touch.
okay.
I'll be showing
all right. Okay, so I won't do any more touch stuff, and I'll
show the template if you want. Or what else?
Okay, well let me try to quickly show templating then.
Look at the bottom of the screen and ignore the top of the
Right.
screen.
So I was talking about templates, and what I'm going to do here quickly is load an example template over here. I'm not going to go through how it was built, but if you look at this template over here, what you see over here, and this is what I was talking about when I spoke about templates. What you can see over here is some JSON data. Now, as I mentioned before, JSON is so important in web application development right now because it's how applications return data from queries, etc. So we've got over here on the left-hand side, we've got some JSON data, and the JSON data represents, you can see the square bracket here, it means it's an array, and then we've got an order number 1 with a date, and then this order has a certain number of items. Then we have the second order, and then we have the third order. So that's basically what we have in the order. Then in the next window, we have the template. So this template now is an HTML definition with placeholders, and the placeholders represent the positions where the JSON data will be consumed. Then we've got some JavaScript, which represents some calculations that are going to be done on the JSON data. And then what you have in this output window here is the result of merging that data into the HTML template. But the reason that we're so excited about templates is, number one, they're incredibly fast. Number two, they're very powerful. And number three, because the output is pure HTML, you've got incredible styling potential. So if you just go to, say, a designer and say, well, you know, this report here looks okay, but it certainly could look a lot better with a little bit of CSS. I'm going to go here and take this exact same example and just apply a little bit of CSS. And now all of a sudden, look at my right-hand side. You can see that it looks a lot better, basically, but nothing has changed other than the CSS. The template is the same. The template now references CSS classes, and now I can take... Hello? Oh, okay. Now I can take this exact same example and just apply a slightly different style sheet. Okay, that's the same one. And go now. And all of a sudden now we've taken the exact same example and created a completely different look, again, just using a little bit of standard CSS. So templating is a big deal, and it's available on both server-side and using server-side JavaScript, and also on the client side. So let me just rush through the final slides here and just see. Okay, so I'll be talking more about single-page applications on Friday, so I'm not going to go into this anymore, excepting to say that what we're going to be doing on single-page applications is working on optimization so that when you build a large application, even though the entire application might be loaded into the browser memory, it's not all in the DOM at the same time. And it's not how much browser memory you're taking up that is the killer for web application performance. It's how much stuff you have in the DOM that is the killer. So what you really want to do is, even though you might have a very large application, you want to minimize the amount of stuff that is in the DOM at any given point in time. And it's our work in single-page applications and breaking a large UX component up into logical sections that will allow you to build much larger single-page applications than is currently possible. Our work on the client-side data store will make sort of the model view controller pattern that many other developers are familiar with sort of more obvious in the UX component. The UX component, in a sense, already has an implicit model view controller architecture, but when we introduce the concept of data stores, that model view controller architecture will become more obvious. Third-party libraries. Who here has heard of Angular, basically? Okay, so not a lot of people have heard of Angular, but in the same way that Node is becoming so important on the server side, Angular is becoming very, very important on the client side. And our goal in Alpha is to basically be as good a corporate citizen in the development ecosystem as possible. And that means embracing technologies like Node and Angular, which have achieved sort of some level of sort of user acceptance. We're working on a new style builder. Sass is very important. For those of you who are not familiar with Sass, Sass is an ability to create style sheets where you use variables. So creating a style sheet where you say, instead of typing in hard-coded color values in your style sheet, you can define a color variable at the top of the style sheet, and then throughout your style sheet you can reference these variables. So now changing a style sheet becomes very easy because you don't edit the CSS classes directly, you just edit the variables at the top of the screen. So we're going to basically make our style sheets more Sass friendly. The new style sheets that we've been developing, like iOS 7, Android Light, Android Dark, all use Sass, but we'd like to basically expose that to you as developers. And another important aspect that we're working on is style mapping. So if you go out onto the web and you find some really cool style sheet, you say, I'd like I really like the way this style sheet looks. I'd like to incorporate that style sheet into my Alpha app. We'd like to give you tools that let you map, say, a Bootstrap style to an Alpha theme so that you can use those styles seamlessly in your Alpha applications. And then the final part of our roadmap is the deployment roadmap, and IIS and the Alpha Cloud are the two big issues on the deployment roadmap. Terry will be talking about IIS later. The IIS work is largely done. We're going to be releasing it as soon as we can get some more feedback from beta testers. But and then the Alpha Cloud stuff is moving along nicely. And the Alpha Cloud basically, so IIS, obviously I don't have to sort of talk about the benefits of IIS. Microsoft's got a lot of effort and a lot of money into developing IIS, so being able to fit nicely into the IIS ecosystem is great for Alpha. Because Alpha Anywhere runs as an IIS plugin, basically it gives you very tight integration with ASP.NET. That means that an Alpha Anywhere application running under IIS shares the same session variables and session state and security context that the ASP.NET application does. So Alpha Anywhere and ASP.NET play very nicely in an enterprise environment. Under IIS, there are performance benefits, scalability benefits, and of course, there's no need for always up to run your Alpha applications. And our long-term goal is ultimately to incorporate IIS Express Edition into our IDE, and eventually our long-term goal is to actually deprecate the Alpha Anywhere Xbasic server so that Alpha Anywhere is always running as a IIS plugin. So that's sort of our long-term goal with regard to deployment. And then, of course, the Alpha Cloud is a third hosting option right now. The hosting options are either self-hosting or an ISP, and the Alpha Cloud will become a third option for deploying your application. So I'm out of time. Unfortunately, I didn't demo all the things that I would have liked to have demoed, but nevertheless, I think I covered quite a lot of what we're doing. It's an exciting roadmap, and we hope that by delivering on this roadmap, we're going to make your lives easier, both as developers selling your applications to your prospective clients and as employees of corporations trying to bring Alpha into the sort of the IT infrastructure of your organizations. So thanks very much. Are there any questions? Yeah.
You didn't mention desktop at all.
Right.
Do you pretty much see desktop going away, or?
It is true that we're not adding enhancements to forms on the desktop. But desktop developers are Xbasic developers. Desktop developers are Xdialog developers. Desktop developers use report writers. So all of the enhancements that we've made to reporting to Xbasic all apply to desktop developers. Furthermore, desktop developers can use components in their desktop applications. There are a lot of Alpha developers who use grids and UX components in their desktop applications. And finally, I would mention that I believe that HTML is a much better presentation layer for building a desktop application than the Alpha form designer ever has been. And recently we introduced support for the Chrome control tightly integrated into Xdialog. So I think the ability for desktop developers to build compelling applications is moving forward at the same time that all of the other developments in the product are moving forward. So I realize that the desktop developers always come to these conferences and feel unloved. But the reality is that the advancements in the products in large part apply to desktop developers as well. Yeah.
We saw you use Node in an A5W page. Are those enhancements also going to be available on server-side events and web components?
So what I did in an A5W page was use JavaScript.
Right.
So, but that was not Node. That was JavaScript. That was basically Alpha server calling into the V8 engine, which is already tightly integrated into Alpha. So you can already go into Xbasic in Alpha right now, and you can dim a V8 object, and then you can say, .execute and pass in some JavaScript. So what I was showing over there in that A5W page was a JavaScript page, not a Node page. Node, I've done a video on calling a Node service from Xbasic. So you can basically go to Node and you can build services that return information that you can then use Xbasic to return value from a Node application. And what I spoke about was having your components making callbacks directly not to the Alpha server, but have your components making callbacks to a Node server that is in turn calling Alpha for services like Alpha DAO. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Are you going to support less as well as SAS or just SAS?
We support either, basically. Either of them are just post processors that take a file and generate CSS from them. So there's no difference to us. We happen to have a built-in SAS processor from Xbasic, but we will support both. Yeah.
I mean, Node have got a good
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the advantage of Node integration. There's a gazillion Node packages or modules out there that, yeah.
Is the template-driven layout available now?
Yes, it's there. In fact, there's a very extensive tutorial on the demo that I showed where we took that invoice JSON data and produced that very nice looking invoice report on the right-hand side that had summary data and all sorts of things. There's an extensive tutorial, which I'm sure will put you to sleep, on building that entire example. So that's there in the video finder. The video finder was recently updated in Alpha Anywhere, and the video finder now is actually a good example of in effect a desktop feature that is written using a UX component. So when you bring up the video finder in Alpha Anywhere right now, you'll see it comes up blindingly fast. It's all just a UX component now with list controls. It's pretty cool, actually. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Will Alpha do anything with mobile near-field communication?
Well, my guess is that will come to you through PhoneGap. But I don't know that. But that would be my expectation, is that by wrapping your app in PhoneGap, you'll get access to that. Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Will the template be able to be something that we could provide for our users to use in a text area type field, perhaps, where I'm thinking of creating merge letters and things of that nature, where they could
sure
in that form?
Well, basically, the template is just HTML with placeholders. So you could build your own UX component that let the user define a template, merge data into the template, and then if you look in the pre-release notes, you'll see we've just released a new server-side object called HTML to PDF that allows you to take HTML, convert it to PDF. So you could very easily write an application where a user, in a UX component where you had a text area where the user could type in some stuff, and then you have a button that makes an AJAX callback, sends that HTML that's been merged into the template back to the server, generate a PDF from that, and then email out the PDF to the client. Those types of applications are all pretty easy to build. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks very much. I know I've used up more time than I should have, but thanks a lot.